Alright, we got a 2001 Durango here. It's got about 88,000 miles on it. And I want to talk to you about the lift that's on it, the stuff that was installed, where it was purchased, how much I paid, and talk a little bit about how it was installed. So, it's a 2001, and the 2000 Durangos and newer have a rack and pinion steering design on them. And you cannot put a 5.5-inch rough country lift on these. At least it's not built for the 2000 newers because Dodge decided to put a rack and pinion setup on the 2000 newer Durangos. The 99 and older Durangos had a steering box set up on them, and so that's what that lift was designed for. So on the 99 and olders, you can put that 5.5-inch lift on, put a 3-inch body lift on, and have a pretty good lifted vehicle. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about too, is, a lot of people are, kind of not really in favor of body lifts, but one thing we have to keep in mind is body lifts do provide more wheel well clearance. More wheel well clearance means bigger tires, and bigger tires means more ground clearance. So although a body lift does not directly affect our ground clearance and raise the vehicle, the bottom of the vehicle up in the air, it does make room for bigger tires, and those bigger tires will raise the chassis of the vehicle up in the air. So if you have a 2000 and newer Durango, then this stuff here that I've done to this, you may look into, it would apply to your vehicle. You could put it on if you want to, and you could just do as much as you want, basically. So one of the questions that we'll answer up front is the tires. I was able to fit 35-inch tires on this vehicle, and they're mud grapplers. Let me see if I can find the tire size for you. So, well, you can't really see right there. Let's go over here in the shade. They're 315 75/16s, and that's the metric size, basically, for a 35. Light truck tire, 315 75/16. Right on the factory wheels, of course. I did look to see if the wheels are wide enough. They are wide enough to put the 315s on there. So those are 35-inch tires. We'll talk about the stuff we had to do to get these 35s on. So here's kind of the rear of the vehicle, how it looks. You see I got a tow hitch on there. This vehicle does tow a boat, so we tow with this setup. It's a pretty heavy boat, and we tow with it. It tows just fine. So I've had this vehicle lifted now for a couple years, and I just put the mud grapplers on here a little while ago because I was basically waiting for my factory tires to wear out before I put these on. But I've had the vehicle lifted for a few years, so a lot of people have concerns about the CV shaft working angles. So I'm going to tell you about my experience with those, and give you some feedback on that stuff. I'll talk to you about how the vehicle performs down the road and things like that. So let's start out with the back of the vehicle. Let's talk about the modifications that were made in the back. So the first thing you're going to notice standing from the side is you're going to see some shackles right here in the back. So these shackles right here, pretty easy to install. They gave me 2 inches in the back, so your factory shackles are going to come down to about here. Your spring is going to hook up right in this neighborhood right here. But these shackles right here, you've got a hole right here where you can take it down a little bit, or you can get the full 2 inches, and that's what I did here. So these shackles right here also have a nice little grease fitting right there, which is nice. Grease that joint. These shackles were purchased with a kit. The kit came with the shackles, the torsion keys in the front, and add-a-leaf springs, which I'm going to show you here in a second. I got those from Spring Force. The kit, the shackles, actually, now that I think of it, I bought the shackles separate. You can get these shackles off of eBay for in the neighborhood of about 50-60 bucks. You can buy those just by themselves and install those. They're a pretty easy mod. The add-a-leafs and the torsion keys are what I got together from Spring Force, and the Spring Force sells this stuff on eBay. I got the shackles and the add-a-leafs for probably about 170 bucks. So you're going to see this spring right here. It kind of looks as thick as these other springs here So it's kind of difficult to tell. You'll kind of see how it's tapered down here a little bit. So usually you add your add-a-leafs above your short spring. You don't want to put it underneath, because then you're going to have a gap between this portion of the spring and then the next one up. So you've got to put them in how they taper down. You've got a thick spring here, a little bit thinner one here, so this add-a-leaf will fit right in here perfect. So it's small, bigger, bigger, and so on. So I'll put the add-a-leaf in. That's going to give you a little bit more ground clearance in the back, lift the vehicle up, and give you some more room to put bigger tires on. Now, these springs that you see right here are not the factory springs. I actually purchased these springs off of ATS. So if you go to Google, type in ATS springs and search for those springs, you can go there and find those springs. These springs for this Durango actually are capable of a higher working load. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 springs, and I added the add-a-leaf, which made 7, because I had this add-a-leaf in my factory springs, and my factory springs actually bent, so I bought these springs. But these springs that come with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 leaves from the company will give you more stability in the back if you're towing. Also give you some more lift to the vehicle. So the combination of this spring that I purchased off the ATS, the add-a-leaf, which is here, along with the shackles, which I'll show you, the add-a-leaf along with the torsion keys, which I'll show you here in a second. So springs off of ATS, springs.com. The add-a-leaf and the shackles were purchased from Spring Force, which is also found on eBay. And then I got the shackles separate. I found those on eBay as well. So purchased the shackles for about $60, installed those, put these springs on. Now, with the spring pack being much thicker than the factory spring pack, that's going to make a few things happen here. You can see my U-bolts. You got to purchase longer U-bolts. So ATS can provide those. You can buy those U-bolts from ATS if you want, or you can just go to like a place that does a lot of spring work and tell them what you got going on, and they can make you some U-bolts. So longer U-bolts in the back, and your center pin right here is going to have to be a little bit longer, because your center pin right here basically goes through that spring pack to center all those springs. So when I bought this brand new spring pack, I basically had to take the center bolt out, install that additional add-a-leaf that I wanted in there, and then install a longer center bolt, and then use C-clamps to squeeze the pack back together. Put your center bolt in, tighten down your nut, have your spring set up basically as an assembly, and then install it with the longer U-bolts and nuts. As you can see, you gotta put different nuts on too, with some washers on there. So we did that in the back. Had to buy some shocks that are a little longer, so I bought some Rancho RS 5000s. They're nothing fancy. They don't have any big tough adjustments on them or anything like that. They're just basically factory shocks that are a little bit longer. These were pretty cheap. They were in the neighborhood of about $100 for both shocks, so I put those on the back. Now, that's pretty much all the modifications I made in the back. As you can see, I'm able to use my factory sway bar setup back here. I didn't have to change any of that. That seems to be okay. Rear brake lines are okay. Going to the rear axle, and then you've also got a breather right here. That's okay. So had plenty of room for that stuff. So basically, in the back of the vehicle, we did the shocks. We had to have longer shocks, different spring packs. Replaced the spring packs. Took the add-a-leaf that I had, broke the spring pack apart, put the add-a-leaf in with a longer center bolt, which you can see sticking down here, and then we had to use longer U-bolts to bolt the spring pack to the vehicle. And we also had the add-a-leafs, which gave us another 2 inches. So that's it for the back. We'll go up here, and we'll roll under here, and we'll talk about the front. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you a view of the CV joints. Let's just see what the working angle looks like on these things. So there's your CV joint right here. You can kind of see how where the joint goes into the front diff, how the first joint's a little bit higher than the second one, so you got a little bit of working angle action going on there. So, you know, a lot of people talk about the CV joints clicking and popping and wearing out because you've increased your working angles. And I'm not going to disagree with that at all. I'm not going to tell you that's not going to happen, because anytime you increase a working angle, joints are going to wear a little bit faster. The rate of the wear, I don't know. But I can tell you I've had this vehicle, like I said, lifted for about a few years now. It's not a daily driver, but I wander around in this thing on the weekends and on the weeknights from time to time, and have done a little off-roading with it. Speaking of off-roading, I got a video, short video in Uwharrie Forest where we did a little off-roading, so if you want to view that, you can. But I haven't had any issues with these CV joints. These CV joints are the factory CV joints that were in the vehicle. I haven't replaced them yet. I don't get any clicking when I'm going around turns, and the four-wheel drive works great. The joints are holding up real well. So it just depends how you operate the vehicle, you know. So right now I can tell you, I drive it normal, drive it responsibly, do a little off-roading with it from time to time, and these CV joints have been okay. So they haven't like worn out in like a month, you know, or just, hey, this is going to happen to you right away. It's been 2 years, you know, and I've probably put 20,000 miles on this vehicle. I tow a boat with it. No problems with the CV joints. So let's talk about, we'll take a look at the torsion keys. I'll show you those. Okay, so here are the keys right here. That's a key right there. You got a key there. The other one you can't really see, but these keys came with the add-a-leaves, and I got these from Spring Force. Now, I cranked this key down right here, and you can see this white mark I got here, and I got a mark here. And basically what I was doing was, when I installed these keys, I got this mark here, and I marked the bolt so I could count my turns and use this little mark here on the cross member as a reference point. So you can do that if you want to get your ride height set correctly, and I'll talk about that here in a little bit. But you'll notice the advantage of, you know, buying some keys is you can see the bolt right here, the thread sticking out. There's not a whole lot of threads sticking out right there, and you can kind of see how the key is not really pulled up into the cross member a lot. So, I mean, you can get pretty close to 3 inches of lift out of your factory keys, but you're going to have to crank them down all the way. So it's just a preference, you know. If you want to install the keys, you can. A lot of people will just crank their factory keys down and then buy the shackles in the back for like 60 bucks and get a couple inches in the front and then put those shackles on. So I mean, you basically lift your whole vehicle lift a Durango for $60. It's not a bad deal. So when you put these keys on and you tighten them down, as this bolt is tightened, this key will rotate like this. This portion of the key will get pulled into the cross member. And as the key gets pulled into the cross member, this portion of the key, you can see the hex here that's on the torsion bar. Torsion bar runs all the way up to your lower control arm and goes in your lower control arm. So as you turn that key, this torsion bar, which is basically a spring, you're twisting it. It's kind of like put your left hand there and your right hand on the other end, and take your left hand and twist this way, and take your right hand and twist that way. So when we pull this key, when we turn this key, this torsion bar is going to be twisting this way, and this torsion bar is going to put twist into this lower control arm, and it's going to pull this lower control arm down. It's going to have to be enough force to basically compensate for the weight of the vehicle in the front, and it'll pull the lower control arm down, or you can look at it like it'll force the vehicle up. You know, it looks more like the vehicle is coming up, but your lower control arm is actually moving down further away from the chassis of the vehicle, which is what gives you the lift. And then you can also see the CV joint working angle on this one. You can see where the joint's coming out of the front differential, coming down, and going into the hub. So, and you can see I lost my bumper. I probably lost that when I was in Uwharrie, going over a couple hills or a few stones or something like that. So, the key, you screw the bolt in, the key will twist like this. It'll twist the bar, and as the bar twists, it will make this torsion bar want to twist like this, and it'll bring your lower control arm down and give you some lift. So one of the things also that you'll notice is you can see these blocks right here, 3-inch blocks. That is a Performance Accessories body lift, so I put that on there. I had to put that on there to make these tires fit. So yeah, the body lift just lifted the body up, and yeah, it made it look like the vehicle was actually lifted higher than what it was. But if I hadn't put the body lift on there, there's no way I would have been able to fit 35-inch tires on. It just wasn't going to happen. I would have been stuck with like 33s. So I put the body lift on there, and that gave me some more wheel well clearance to put the 35s on. So it's a Performance Accessories body lift. You go to Google Performance Accessories body lift, or you can just go in there and Google Dodge Durango body lift, and the body lifts are going to pop up. So you've got a block here. You got another block further back that you can see, and there's a couple blocks behind the rear axle. And then you've also got a block up here in the front. So basically, how to do a body lift on a Durango or any vehicle. Your front bumper, that's going to have to come off. Your rear bumper is going to have to come off. And then you're going to have to basically remove the body mount bolts from one side. So like I could take the bolts all the way off on this side, on the driver's side only. Remove those completely. And loosen the bolts on the right side. And then what I would do basically, take a jack and a block of wood and jack the left side up. Take my new blocks and slide them in, start my new bolts, and then repeat on the other side. Passenger side, take the bolts out, slide the blocks in, jack it up, slide the blocks in, put your new bolts in with red Loctite, secure it, and go from there. I wish it was that easy when I put the body lift on, though, because it wasn't. There's a lot of things you got to take into consideration. And I'm going to tell you, if you're going to put a body lift on like a 99, I'll tell you a few things different about the 99s and the 2000s, 2000 newer, 99 and older. So one of the things you're going to have to do when you're going to consider doing a body lift is you're going to have to think about all the stuff that's going to be affected when you lift the vehicle. So you can see, here's my fuel tank here, and you can see here's where my fuel goes in from the fuel cap, and here's my vent or return deal back up. So you get this little spacer right here that comes with the kit, a couple clamps, and you're going to have to cut this hose and install this in there. And then you can also see where I installed this longer hose. They give you this longer hose, so you can just go right down to the tank here. And so you gotta make modifications here. Cut your fill hose, put this in, install this longer hose, because your body is going to be getting lifted up from the tank. So this right, your fill right here is going to be too short. So you got to take that into consideration. That's one of your big things in the back that you're going to have to look at. Now, furthermore, you're going to get instructions that are going to come with the kit, and they're going to be in black and white. Pictures are going to be kind of tough to read. So you've got this whole area right in here that you're going to have to look at. You're probably not going to be able to see when I take the fuel cap out, but you just got to take a look on the inside and make sure that you don't rip that out. You want to make sure you cut that hose down there before you actually lift the vehicle. So down here on the bottom, I think we got a little ground wire action to take a look at. Maybe not. We can kind of see the space between the frame and the body. I've got this harness right here. I relocated. It used to come down kind of in the front, and I just zip tied it out of the way. You can see those brackets right there that are installed. Those brackets come with the kit. They come with the little mounting bolts, and I'll show you from a different view here what those are. So you can kind of see, one of the big things you can see is this room I've got right here. I did fill this in. I probably should. It's basically up to you, but I didn't fill it in because I just thought that it's a little bit more room for the engine to breathe. You know, let that hot heat, you know, that the engine generates, just let it vent here if it needs to. But anyway, these brackets are for these brake lines. So these brake lines used to go, you can kind of see the old mount right here, but with this bracket, they need to make their way up to the master cylinder. So these brackets, you get these brackets, and these are designed to support your brake line. So it's very important that you put those in there, and before you jack your driver's side up, you're going to want to make sure your brake lines are free. So while we're here, it's kind of hard to see, but this right here is your steering shaft that goes down to the rack. And at the rack, well, you can kind of see that bolt right there. You're going to get this little adapter, or I don't know what you want to call it. I guess you call it adapter. But you're going to disconnect your steering stem here from your rack. You're going to take that bolt out. I can't remember what size it is, but you'll take that off. You can kind of see the splines down in there. You're going to slide this up off the rack. And be very sure that you do not move the steering wheel, because the steering wheel and the rack are basically, I don't want to say they're timed, but they are timed, and you don't want to turn the steering wheel one way too far and one way the other way while you're doing this, because if you do, when you put it back together, you're driving the vehicle. If you have it half a turn off or a whole turn off, you've got what's called a clock spring that's located up in your steering column, and that clock spring is there for all your steering wheel controls, your airbag, your horn. So if you have your steering wheel off and you reinstall it, you'll find out, because your ABS light, or not your ABS light, your airbag light will come on. You'll notice everything on your steering wheel switches will not be working. So when you disconnect your steering shaft, you make very sure that you do not move it. You make sure it stays just in the same position it was. You just slide it up off the rack, you slide the adapter on, tighten down the adapter, slide your rack back over on, put your bolt in, tighten it down, and away you go. So you have to do that for your body lift, because your steering wheel, your body is obviously going to be getting lifted away from your rack, so you've got to do something to compensate for that longer length, and that's where that adapter comes in that comes with the kit. So you got your brackets here for your brakes, your steering shaft deal that you got to install. Let's talk about some of the stuff that we had to do under the hood. Before we talk about under the hood, though, this is a 2001, and you're going to notice I got this little fancy schmancy four-wheel drive set up here. Obviously, it would be great if I had the little through-the-floor manual four-wheel drive deal for my transfer case, but I don't. So if you got a transfer case that's going through the floor, you got to think, well, I'm lifting up the body of my vehicle, my transfer case isn't exactly going to move, so I'm going to have to put something in, because I'm going to need longer linkage. The kit will come with the linkage for your transfer case. So when before you're lifting the vehicle, you're going to want to disconnect the linkage to your transfer case. Once you get it lifted, you'll go in, you'll look at the instructions, and down below the vehicle where your transfer case linkage is, they'll give you the hardware you need to lengthen your transfer case linkage. On a 2001, you got your electronic set up there, so you're good. You don't need to do anything. So moving to the front, let's take a look under the hood. So you'll see the old Dodge V8 Magnum air cleaner there is sitting a little high. So that's going to happen. Nothing you can really do about that, but it's okay. So a couple things you're going to notice right off the bat, and you're going to see these brackets in the kit. I got a bracket here. It's a ground strap. So this ground strap generally just bolted up here, but the body's going to be getting lifted, so you just take the 13mm nut off that's located up here, take the eyelet off, install the ground strap, and then put your ground wire in over there. So you're going to have the same thing over here. You got another one right there. So same deal. You're going to get two of those in the kit. That's what those are for. Now, if you notice, what we're looking at right here, here's your fan blade right there. Now here is the top of the fan shroud. You can see the clearance between the top of the blade and the fan shroud, and you're just like, man, you know, that's weird. Well, that's what's going to happen. You know, your engine's going to be in your chassis. It's not going to move, but you're lifting the body. And all this stuff right here is bolted to the body, so there's going to have to be some modifications made there. So one of the things that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to cut some radiator hoses. That's a whole lot of fun. You really want to make sure that you get the stuff on the hoses correctly. So your upper hose, as you can see, it's good. There's no modification needed. Your lower hose, that's going to run over here from the bottom of the engine where the thermostat's located, you are going to have to cut. So you're going to see it right there. Those two clamps. Kind of hard for me to point. Right there. So you gotta drain your coolant. You gotta take that hose off, and right there where it comes out of the engine, down here and comes up, that's where you're gonna cut it. And stick that pipe in and clamp it down real good and reinstall it. So that's one of the things you're gonna need to do, and you're gonna want to drain your coolant and disconnect that hose before you lift it, so you don't break the plastic neck off your radiator. The fan shroud also needs to be modified, and I'd highly recommend you don't remove your fan shroud. Your fan shroud needs to stay on the vehicle. The fan shroud, a lot of people think are for safety, and they are for safety. However, what they do is they create an area around the fan, and it makes it so the fan blade can pull air across that radiator when the engine gets up, you know, to 212 or whatever temperature your viscous fan clutch is set at. So don't ever take your fan shroud out and let it fly, because if your fan shroud is out and removed and your fan comes on, it's not going to pull any air across that radiator, and you need that to keep your vehicle from overheating. So you notice your fan blade right here, there's space between your blade and the top of your shroud. Well, what does that mean on the bottom? Well, what that means on the bottom is your fan shroud on the bottom is going to have to be modified, and you can't really see it from here, so I'm just going to talk about it. You're going to have to take this off, take that out, and then you're going to take your fan shroud off the bottom, and you're going to have to basically take a pair of plastic cutters or something. You're going to have to do some cutting. I'm trying to see if I can find you a view where I can at least get a glimpse of it, but I don't know if we're going to be able to. You can see. All right, so there you go. You can see it. So you can see where I've cut the fan shroud, and you can see a fan blade right there. So if you don't cut the shroud, that fan blade is gonna push right into that plastic part. So you're gonna have to cut that portion of the shroud right there to give clearance for your fan blade, and that's gonna be in the instructions. They'll tell you to do that, but that's one of the things you got to do, because that radiator is being lifted up, and the fan shroud's bolted to the radiator is bolted to the body, and the body's what you're lifting up, and your fan blade is bolted to your engine, and your engine is bolted to your frame rails. So your engine and your fan aren't going to move, but your radiator and your fan shroud are, so you've got to consider that and make the modifications needed so your fan blade doesn't hit your shroud. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else for the body lift that you got to do. You got your wiring that you've got to look at. You've got some wiring in the engine compartment. We talked about that. You've got your brake lines over on the left side that you need to consider. You got your fuel tank fill tube that you need to consider. So you're going to have to consider that stuff before you lift it. And of course, your bumpers are going to have these bumper brackets. You kind of see that little straight piece right there. You can kind of see that bracket right there with the bolt going through and it coming up. So you're going to get two of those brackets that are going to come with the kit, and those are for your bumper, to raise your bumpers up. So that's what those are for. So that's pretty much a body lift in a nutshell on any vehicle, but specifically a Durango. So you're gonna look at all wiring, brake hoses, your fuel tank fill, coolant hoses, and disconnect them, lift the body, get everything secured, get the body secured with the new bolts, and then reattach everything. And the kit's going to have the instructions in it. So that's pretty much the body lift. Now, one of the things that I also had to do to put the 35s on here, and of course there's a lot of people that talk about wheel spacers and towing and things like that, and if you notice, it's kind of hard to see, these tires, they do stick out of the fenders. You can see that a little better. This kind of sticks out of the fenders, and they stick out a little bit more than the factory ones, because the factory tires were 265 70 16s, and these are 315 75 16, and a 315 is obviously a little bit wider than a 265. However, the difference in the tires are not going to make them stick out as much as you see here. So we did have a little help from some wheel spacers that I purchased off eBay as well. I think those things were like 125 or 150 bucks for 4. So you can kind of see where the brake rotor is located in reference to the wheel. The brake rotor is a little bit closer to the inside of the wheel. Let me see if I can find you a better picture so you can see them. It's kind of hard to tell here. Well, you can look. Let's look on the other side here. I'll show you. These are 1.5-inch wheel spacers, and they are hub-centric wheel spacers. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So you can kind of see. There's the brake drum, and there's the wheel. You can see the spacer there a little bit, but you can see basically you can see where the brake drum is located in reference to the wheel. The brake drum's kind of sitting back a little bit. So I had to put the wheel spacers on to make a little bit of clearance up in the front for the 35-inch tires, and I also had to do a little bit of trimming to make these things fit. We'll talk about that in a second. But what I do want you all to know is there's a lot of people that say things about wheel spacers. You know, it's not good to tow with them, or you know, all kinds of stuff. I don't know. I mean, you can read all kinds of forums on the internet about people talking about them. And once again, just like the constant velocity joints, I'm just going to give you my experience with these things. I bought the hub-centric spacers. And the hub-centric ones basically have a ring on the inside of them, and they bolt up to the hub of the vehicle, and then the wheel will center on those spacers, just as the wheel is going to center on that little ring that's on the actual hub itself. So I put these things on. I haven't broken any lug nuts or any of that business. I don't put any Loctite on the threads. Just use a torque stick, crank them down to 100 foot-pounds with your 1/2-inch impact. Bust out your 1/2-inch drive clicker torque wrench, hit them all, make sure that they're torqued, and away you go. Haven't had any problems. So they give it a nice little look. Also give me the room that I need up in the front. So as you can see here, well, let's look over on the other side. I did trim the fenders a little bit, like right here. Cut them. You can use a hey chickie. You can use a hacksaw, whatever. But I had to cut right here, straight down, and then I also had to do a little bit of cutting back here. You can see I had to cut this plastic out right there, because when you turn the wheel, the back of the tire is going to be coming in right here and hitting, so you got to trim right there. Also had to trim this piece of plastic. Generally comes down more, but I just cut it straight across, and that's been just fine. So you'll see a little bit of mud in here. That is from URI. There's a little short video I took just going through one of the moderate trails, going up a couple hills, taking it nice and easy. So that's pretty much it. You're going to have to trim behind your wheels to make room for your 35s, if that's what you decide to do. I've had these tires on here for a little while now. No vibration. They run great. And as you can see, look at the wheel weight. Nobody takes that into consideration. You buy cheap tires, and you'll see, oh, would you look at that? When they put this tire on, there's no weight on the outside. They didn't even need to put a weight on the outside. So, I mean, whoop-de-doo. They didn't have to put a weight on the outside. They had to put one there, big deal. And they had to put one there, big deal. You're always going to generally have a weight on each side of the tire, and then if you don't have a weight, that's few and far in between. It happens. But where I'm going with this is, you buy the cheap tires, and you're going to be stacking about 30 pounds of wheel weights on the tires right next to each other to get them to balance. So the Nittos, you know, you pay for what you get. You know, I bought these tires off of Walmart.com. I paid $1,200 for them, shipped to my house. I got them in like a couple days. Had them put on. They balanced them with like hardly any wheel weights, and you drive this thing down the road, and besides the nice howl that it makes in unison, you don't even know you got mud grapplers on here. You'd think that you just had like street tires on the vehicle. It's nice and smooth. One of the other things I want to tell you about that I did, probably not a bad idea. You can see this right here. This is my transmission cooler right here. And this vehicle did not come with one, so I bought it. There's the numbers off right there. I bought it off of Mopar Overstock. and I installed that, and you can buy the little lines. Basically what they do, instead of the transmission cooler going straight into the radiator, you get a line that comes with it, and you can make it so the transmission oil goes to that external cooler, and then to the cooler on the radiator, and then back to the transmission. So if you're going to do some off-roading, or you're going to be doing some towing, highly recommend it. It's going to lengthen the life of your transmission by far. So one of the number one reasons for transmission failures are basically high transmission operating temperatures, and it's not as noticeable as an engine overheat. So you're going to save a lot of money in the long run, a lot of headache by installing one of those things. It's a Mopar transmission cooler. It's the factory one. I felt like going with the factory one, but you can go to like advancedauto.com and purchase one of them off of there, and then just cut the lines, use some barbs and some hose clamps, and crank them down and secure your lines, and do that as well too if you want to. So that's basically it. My shocks in the front are the factory shocks. I didn't need to lengthen those, but I had to lengthen the ones in the back because I put different springs on, I put shackles on, all that sort of stuff. Basically in the front you got a 3-inch body lift, and I put some different shackles in and cranked it down. So that's pretty much it for the front. And then in the back I put in some springs from ATS, did the shackles, add a leaf, and we had the body lift there, so we had to have some longer springs, or some longer shocks. So that's pretty much it. Got a video in Uwari of this piece of machinery driving through some trails nice and easy, and I may take some more in the future for you guys, but this is basically what it took to put 35s on a Durango. So I know that there's not a whole lot of straight up conversation about what you got to do to put them on there. You get yourself a Performance Accessories body lift, some 2-inch shackles in the back, and add a leaf, some keys in the front, and away you go. You don't have to put a bigger spring pack in the back. You don't have to do the ATS spring pack in the back. You can just put an add a leaf in with your factory springs, and you can still fit your 35s on. So you got any questions, please put them down there on the comments section. I'll see what I can do to answer them for you. And happy lifting.